Hi, I'm your host, Hayley Byrnes, and welcome to the very first episode of Birthing Beyond 35, a podcast for expectant and hopeful mothers who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and who are ready or thinking about having a baby. So, a little about me. I'm a former sports reporter and producer who, for the time being, is a stay-at-home mum. I'm originally from Auckland, New Zealand, by way of Sydney, Australia, and have been living here in the US since 2013. After becoming pregnant with my first child at 40 years old, I felt compelled to start a podcast to help and inspire women who are over 35. Because let's face it, we live in a society that's still a little judgmental when it comes to being an older mother. It's been drummed into us over and over that a woman's peak reproductive years are between late teens and late 20s. And for the majority of women, that's great. It's worked out. They've had children young. They've ticked the box. But for a lot of us, that timeline just hasn't worked out, or it simply just hasn't been something we've been wanting. This podcast is intended to be for every woman, single or in a relationship. Maybe you haven't met the right person yet. Maybe you've enjoyed your freedom, you've traveled. Maybe you've been grinding in your career and you haven't had the chance to even comprehend where on earth a baby fits in. Perhaps you're even sitting there deciding, hey, maybe I want to do this alone. With it now being well established that more and more women are having babies later in life than at any other time in US history, it's time together we start changing the narrative. For me, when I was pregnant, I just found there was so little content out there. I wanted to hear about women who had safely given birth over 35 and 40. I craved inspiration and reassurance that everything will be okay, despite being advanced maternal age. So I came up with this idea when I was pregnant, even before my daughter was born. It just took me a while to get here, but we're finally doing it. So enough talking about me. Let's get into today's episode. Today on Birthing Beyond 35, I speak with Lindsey, who lives in Dallas with her husband, Brian. Lindsey is the mother of two. She had her first little girl when she was 37, and she recently gave birth to a boy at 40 years old. We discuss her harrowing first pregnancy, which involved a week's isolation in the ICU, and how she never once bowed down to the belief she wouldn't have a problem conceiving in her late 30s.
I think in this day and age, it's a lot less of a concern. You know, you're not a walking medical miracle anymore to, have a baby at 45. A lot of people are doing it.
Lindsey was also super open in discussing her experience with postpartum anxiety. It's something we still don't really talk about as a society, as a community, and she shares with us how she managed to climb out on top. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Lindsey, I was just chatting to you. I didn't realize that you'd only just given birth 12 weeks ago. So I do want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I think I'm very excited to talk to you. Just for the listeners, I briefly met Lindsey about a year ago, actually, in Chicago. Very quick interaction through my husband and her husband, they're friends. And I just loved talking to her. It was a very quick conversation in the kitchen about, having babies. And I was like, wow, she's amazing. I just loved how candid she was. So I basically have been harassing her for the last month to come on and talk to me. And here she is today. So thank you so much. Your husband, Brian, let's go back to how you guys met and how old were you back then?
We met, I must have been 29 or 30. I was just about to start graduate school in Chicago, and that's when we met. And he's 2 years younger than me,
which is nothing. 2 years isn't even worth talking about.
Which is nothing. But yeah, so we started dating throughout grad school and got married when I was 33. We were married in 2015. And then, in 2019, I found out I was pregnant and had a nice little pandemic baby in April of 20.
Wow, what a
So that
great
was fun.
time. Okay, so you were
Yeah.
married about 4 years, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah.
Married about 4 years and you became pregnant. Had you been trying to conceive or it just kind of happened?
We weren't not trying, I
Hmm.
guess. We weren't like,
Monitoring
tracking
everything and
all of
tracking.
that stuff and
Hmm.
trying super hard. We were just kind of in the, we're having fun as a married couple. If this happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I was keen to have a baby before. It's funny you say 40 because I was like, I was like, I'd like to, be done by around then.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a fast and hard, number in my head. But my mom had me when she was in her 40s. So it
Hmm.
just never really bothered me that much. And yeah. And so we weren't not trying and found out in the fall of 2019 that I was pregnant.
Okay, so you weren't really policing or like monitoring your ovulation, so you had no reason to worry or ever think that, babies might not happen for you.
No, I was never worried. I'm from a very large family, and my sisters, my OB was always kind of like, this is not something you're going to need to worry about. Like,
Hmm.
based on my genetics, I didn't have to
Okay.
worry
That's so interesting.
struggling to get pregnant.
So your OB was very much like, your family, you're in a family of breeders.
Yeah,
You should be fine.
yeah. She was
That's
also,
so
yeah.
interesting.
She
I've
was
never
like, your
heard that.
mom. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's how much weight that holds, or if she was just saying it to make me feel better. But she was
Hmm.
also like, my mom had me when she was 45, so she was kind of like, you don't have that much to worry about. She was
Yeah.
like, take your time.
Wow. So your mum, and so what was your age difference with your siblings?
My oldest sister's 20 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
So there's a big
Go mum.
spread. Yeah.
That's
So she
amazing.
started having babies when she was 20, and she didn't stop until she was 45.
Wow. And how many of you are there?
6.
Wow. Go mama. That's amazing. Okay, so you got into the point, you're now 37, you're fallen pregnant. You are now, by medical standards, your advanced maternal age. Was that
Yes.
something that you just touched on it then, that your OB wasn't that concerned? Did you and Brian ever have a conversation about it?
No, we didn't. I did think it was funny though, because my OB did not think it was that big of a deal.
That's great to hear.
But then when you start going through, like, you're actually pregnant and you're going to do all of the classes, and then back then they used to call it a geriatric pregnancy.
Uh-huh.
And then they started calling it a elderly pregnancy.
Awesome.
And I think now they've changed it to
Advanced. Yeah.
advanced pregnancy. So I don't know if they've got some marketing people working.
Yeah, I'm sure it would change in the next 5 years. 1,000%.
Let's come up with something a little bit less offensive.
That's when you started to be a bit more mindful, I guess, like being in the waiting room and suddenly everyone's like 25.
Yeah, and also we live in a neighborhood of a lot younger couples with younger kids, so it's a little bit comical. Like our good friends and our neighbors on our street are all 5 years younger than me with our kids, and our kids are all the same age.
Yeah, but I mean, again, 5 years is nothing. It's just just something we get in our head because of society, etc.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're pregnant. Amazing. How was your pregnancy?
It was great. I had one kind of hospitalization, but it had nothing to do with me being pregnant. It was like a respiratory thing that came before COVID.
Okay.
So I was in the ICU for a week, which it was actually kind of nice.
Wow. Nice to get some sleep.
Yeah, I got some sleep.
Some hydration. Got the drips
People
going.
took care of me. It was lovely. But that was early on. I was like 16 weeks pregnant when that happened. And then after that, everything was pretty textbook.
That must have been scary though, right?
The hospitalization was a little bit scary, but they were also, I was having problems breathing. This is before COVID. I was actually out visiting our friends that got some sort of cough, and I had a cough for like a month. I went to a spin class one night, and I came home and woke up at midnight and I couldn't breathe. Like I could not breathe at all. And so we went to the emergency room. They gave me some steroids. I went home, and the next day I went to see my OB. She checked everything out. She said it's totally fine. Keep taking the steroids. And that night it happened again, and it was worse. And so we just went to, the urgent care by my house because we had waited so long in the emergency room the night before, and I didn't want to do that again. And, you know, the urgent care doesn't have people,
Yeah.
you know, they didn't know what to do with me because I'm pregnant. And they thought I might have like a blood clot in my lung. And so they ended up throwing me in an ambulance and sending me right back to the hospital. So, so from there I was, my like oxygen levels were in the 80s. And so they put me right into the ICU, which I don't think they would have done if I wasn't pregnant.
Yeah.
But they kind of just didn't know what to do with me. And they never quite figured out what it was. They thought it was like a combination of a pregnancy-induced asthma. I've never had asthma in my life. And I had this, you know, cold or whatever I had that exasperated it. But lucky for me, this happened in November of 2019. If it had been, you know, 3 months later, they probably would have thought it was COVID and, you know, intubated me, or I would have been stuck in the hospital with,
my gosh,
with all the pandemic related things. So it's funny, like it feels like I had COVID and was hospitalized for it, but it wasn't. I like was tested for antibodies. They have no idea what I had.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was
a great story for when she's older.
Yeah, when she's older, that she was my little fighter.
So you said she was born April 2020, is that right?
Yeah, April 30th. Yeah.
Okay, so you know, COVID's been going for like 6 weeks at this point. How did you give birth to Olivia?
I was induced. COVID was pretty rampant, but they had already. I don't know if you remember the first like month or so. They were changing the rules all the time about like
we all just sat in front of our TV watching CNN.
Yeah,
every day.
Exactly. I was like ordering takeout and watching CNN, but they weren't going to let your husband in the in the labor and delivery, like all of that sort of thing. But so by the time I had my baby, they were letting husbands come in, so you could have a partner.
Very fortunate,
but no other visitors. So I felt really lucky to have him with me. And yeah, it was outside of the global pandemic and having to wear a mask while you're in labor. It was pretty textbook, and I was induced on a Tuesday night. I had her at like 3 a.m. on Thursday morning, and we left the hospital Friday, and I went home, and it was easy.
You make it sound like very easy, but I love the details, so I'm going to ask. But so how long were you like in labor for and pushing for?
Oh, pushing for maybe less than 10 minutes.
the dream pregnancy.
I'm sure I was in labor. I was in labor for probably 20 something hours, but
did you have very severe contractions, or were you just like, this is manageable?
And honestly, I had an epidural, and so I couldn't feel a thing. So it was not that bad. I didn't think it was as bad as I thought it was going to be.
That's cool. I mean, I'll eventually talk about my birth, but it was not any of that. But it just sounds amazing. Okay, so
everyone's different.
I know. How were those first few weeks after you brought her home?
The first few weeks were a little scary, but I think, obviously, like, you learn quickly to not Google things. I think that's like the most important piece of advice I could like pass on to anyone is like, the internet is not your friend.
I know, especially these days, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like these days of just Instagram advice everywhere. Like you don't even look for it, but it appears in your algorithm because you looked up something. And you also and then you're like, I'm a shit parent because I don't read 10 books to her, and or I didn't do this, or I didn't do this.
All of her toys aren't wooden.
Yeah. I mean, I was that person. I did it for aesthetic reasons. I wanted wooden toys because they look good. But no, it's yeah. And I just think like back to our parents' age, they just did what they did. They just did what their doctor told them, and you went home and you.
Well, that's the nice thing about that is that, you just called the doctor, right? And so you didn't have to go read some horror story on the internet about from someone you don't even know about, and they're things that, you're panicked about because you haven't slept, and normally it would be fine, but it's the middle of the night and you need an answer to, I don't even know, like, can I give my baby a bottle that's been sitting out 30 minutes longer than it was supposed to, or do I have to go make another
Bacteria
one?
infection.
I accidentally gave her this bottle. It's like, is she going to die? Like these stupid panicky thoughts. But yeah,
Emily Oster, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's the economist that wrote Expecting Better, and she's written a couple other books, Crib Sheet.
Oh no, I have one of it. Yeah, I read it.
Yeah, and the family firm.
Haven't done that one.
She was kind of like my I went back to whatever she said. It was kind of like what I followed. And she just like the all the data and being able to, have her walk through decision-making processes was really helpful for me. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to pick this one thing, and this is what I'm going to, she's the guru that I'm going to follow. So if I have a question, she has a great website now called parentdata.org, and I subscribe to it. And so if I have like the middle of the night question, instead of Googling it, like I'll type it. If it's like not something I can call and ask her pediatrician, I go and I go to parentdata.org and see if Emily Oster's written about it, because if she has, typically
trust information.
Yeah, it's trusted information, and I feel like she's qualified to talk about it. And yeah, so I think that was a big breakthrough for me. But yeah, the first couple of weeks are scary.
What about, like, say, mentally? You're sitting there now, you've got a brand new baby. The world is still very unpredictable. People don't know if they're going to lose their jobs and all of that. Like, how did that go for you? And were there any like down points?
I don't think I thought I had, any type of depression. It was more of like anxiety. Now that I'm thinking, I think it was more of a postpartum anxiety, which I think can be lumped in with depression, but I think they're a little bit different. I think that was there the whole time. And about 3 or 4 months in, I talked to my primary care doctor about it, and she actually prescribed me an antidepressant, which I tried for a little while. I didn't really like it. So I went off of it. But 6 months in, it was a lot better. But it's, it's there. I think it was more anxiety for me than it was depression. If you were to like look at it from a clinical perspective.
Yeah, it's hard that they try and lump everything under one term, postpartum depression, because you think depressed, you think, well, I got out of bed today and I got dressed and I went for a walk, but they have just so many, I guess, subjects that fall under this umbrella of depression. Like there's rage, there's anxiety, like you say.
Yeah.
And what I liked, just going back to that, when I first met you, like I literally had just met you. It had been 15 minutes chatting, and you was like straight away were telling me that you had postpartum issues. And I was like, that's so great, because where I was at the time, I was living in Kentucky, and I feel that nobody in Kentucky ever said that anything was wrong. I probably, know about a dozen mums in Kentucky, and they're all amazing people. But you never heard anyone say that they had a problem, because it just didn't seem like it was ever talked about. Yet I met you in that moment.
I feel like every mom I know is like, Zoloft.
Yeah, everyone had like something. And then
your best friend. Yeah.
No, I just love it. I was like, I love that she just opened up to me about that. And then I moved to California, 8 months ago, and, I met a mum within 10 minutes. She's going, I had bad postpartum depression. I met another mum. I go for a walk with her. She's telling me she had postpartum depression. I was like, just the freedom to be able to talk about it. And I get it. Like, everyone has a different community and a different hub of what's acceptable and putting on a face, and, everything's perfect. But it's just it's funny. Everyone here that I've literally met has had some sort of postpartum depression.
I think it's almost impossible not to, like outside of just the hormones, but the lack of sleep, it
messes you up so bad. It makes you such an asshole.
It's a basic need. It's granted, I was like, don't look on Instagram. There was like an Instagram video I saw that was like, you have to treat sleep like drinking water, eating food, like it's
true.
like oxygen. It's vital to being able to be human and function.
Okay, so you had, I guess, not the ideal postpartum experience. And I even remember, I can't remember when I spoke to you at the time, I didn't know if you were thinking like you were one and done. Was there a point where you were just like, I don't know if I want another kid?
I think we went back I went back and forth a couple of times. I didn't want to be, I think what we talked about was I didn't want to be pregnant again.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
I wasn't looking forward to being pregnant again. I didn't want her to be an only child.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the impetus for
for having another one. But I survived. I survived a second pregnancy. And,
which we're going to get to right now. We're going to talk more about it. So had you been trying or was it the same thing again when you guys were just like, let's just not think about it? You're 38 now, right? I guess you're 38 years old. So I guess you're a bit more conscious of
I was 30. Yeah, I was 39. And so what we had been trying earlier in the year, we kind of like gave it a 6-month go and like did all this tracking and did all this stuff and nothing happened. And so I was kind of like, oh, okay, like maybe I'm too old.
I'll interject there. I'm going to interject. Did you ever test your fertility?
I didn't.
No. Were you ever?
No. I'm also
curious too, or were you just like, I don't want to know?
No, I was kind of like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
That's a great way. No, I get that. I 100% get that. You'd rather like try and fail than never to have tried it all. Basically, like you want to be like, we tried. Yeah, I think that's the same. That's the same for us where we are right now. We're like, it's a ton of work, but I don't want to sit here in 5 years' time and go, shit, I wish we gave it a go.
Yeah. So we tried for like 6 months, nothing happened. And so I kind of was just like, all right, let's just
not talk about it
trying.
Anymore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's just
what is stop trying? Okay, you just don't look at you're not looking at your ovulation calendar anymore. Is that what you mean when you say stop trying?
Yeah, like you're still not using birth control. Sure enough, 4 months later,
Okay, so 10 months. Took around 10 months. That's fine.
Yeah, it took around 10 months.
And when you look back at it, were you like, oh, I felt pregnant when I was ovulating? Did you ever like look back and look at that map? Or did you think it just happened whenever?
I don't really know when I got pregnant.
That's good. That's great. I want to be this blasé. I want to stop analyzing everything.
Like, the doctor asked me and I was like,
last day of your period? You're like, I don't know.
I didn't even know. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like I couldn't figure it out. And so I think I just made up a date, which was super fun when you're like, going to do like when you're 9 months pregnant and you're like, wait a minute, did I give them like the proper, but
is the baby going to come earlier than we planned?
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay. So you're 39 now. And now you must be really getting, for example, I'll talk about this at some point, but for me, for example, I was 40. So they were just like, when you hit 32 weeks, we need you coming in every week to give you an ultrasound.
Oh,
did you ever have that?
Yeah, they did. And I loved it. And it was during COVID. And it was actually kind of fun because it was like the only thing I had to do during COVID. So, I like looked forward to these appointments because you got to see someone besides your husband.
Yeah. And you get to see the ultrasound. You get to see something.
I got to get out of the house and go do something that was like.
I did it. And sometimes I felt like, because every week, everything was fine. But I was like, oh my God, like, I got to keep going in again. And then I'd literally just spend 2 minutes with my OB and she'd be like, yeah, you're fine. See you next week. And I'm like, why am I spending an hour and a half of my day coming here every week? How was the pregnancy the second time round? Obviously, you've got a toddler now that's sucking up your energy. How was your second pregnancy?
I was a little bit more tired. It was fine, but I was definitely more tired than I was the first time around, and like a little bit achier. But I was able to do Pilates. Like I did a lot of pretty religiously through pregnancy too. But I had to stop at 30 weeks because of COVID, because everything shut down. So this one, I went to a Pilates class on Monday and I had the baby on Friday or Saturday. I was able to do it up until the end.
Did you ever have any experiences that were, say, ever negative, like just a dumb comment by a nurse or anyone about you being 40 and having a baby?
My mom has a funny story about, and she gave birth to me. It was 1983 and she was 45. And she said, and this is back in the day when your chart would be in on a clipboard outside your little waiting room or whatever, where you're in the hospital. And she said every nurse or doctor that came in to talk to her thought that they had messed up her birth date.
Oh no.
It was impossible that she was that old. She was like a medical miracle having a baby.
She was geriatric at 1985 or 1983, 100%.
1983, they were shocked that she was having a baby. And then I remember my my friends, like in kindergarten, actually, it's one of my friends from kindergarten. Her mom used to always tell me, she's like, oh, it's like, your mom was, I mean, my mom was like 50 when I was,
Oh, wow. Kindergarten. Yeah.
5. Yeah, something like that. And she was like, I think all these moms were like shocked to see her, out and about with a kindergartner.
Yeah, different times back then. And so, yeah, a little bit more acceptable now. I would say
sure.
It kind of depends where you're living. So second time round, what did you learn from your first experience with postpartum depression? And did you suffer the same thing again?
I definitely had the same anxiety that I previously had. And I think the bigger difference with the second kid is that you're getting a lot less sleep. And when you do get a little bit of sleep, the other
I've never even thought of that. That's just, oh my God, just the thought of that.
It's
Wait,
astonishing. Yeah, way less sleep. And there's another human there that needs your attention and wants to be loved, and you feel almost guilty, right?
Oh, 100%.
For having another child, because they didn't ask for that, even though they're going to love having a little brother eventually. So that was really tough. The first 8 to 10 weeks was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're a little bit on the other side of it now. So the baby's
awesome. So obviously so
sleeping through the night, and so things are looking up. But it was a much bigger struggle with 2 than it was with 1 for me, which I hear a lot of people saying it was harder for them to go to 0 to 1. That was more of like a jarring life change. But for me, going 1 to 2 was just bonkers.
Great. A lot to look forward to if that ever does happen to us. So they definitely say that, pregnancy hormones can completely shift with the second time. But you've just found that you just recognize those same feelings straight away.
Yeah, straight away. And I was also like,
at least you knew how to manage them.
Yeah, I knew how to manage it. Went straight to my OB, my doctor, to talk about it.
Yeah.
And also, asked for more help. I need
1,000%. Yeah, I don't think I'm a type A person, but I would always want to do everything. I'd want to bath her. I'd want to feed her. I'd want to give her that bottle. I'd want to do this, because nobody else is doing it right, and she's going to cry if you do this. And it's hard to ask for help and kind of offload.
You have to give up that control. And it took me, I think I started doing that because that's what I did with her. And the first week, and I was like, stop it, Lindsey. Just go take a nap. And,
I know. It's so much easier said than done.
Someone else feed your baby and put them to sleep.
Yeah.
And you'll be a better mom when you wake up.
1,000%. And so just signing off and just finishing up, you obviously did have 2 successful and very healthy and amazing pregnancies in your late 30s and being 40 years old. What advice would you give out there to anyone that's overthinking it or concerned that it might not happen for them?
I guess stop thinking about it, because both times I stopped thinking about it, I got pregnant.
Yeah.
I think in this day and age, it's a lot less of a concern. It's not, you're not a walking medical miracle anymore to, have a baby at 45. A lot of people are doing it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, thank you so much for your time and sharing your 2 successful pregnancy stories with us here at Birthing Beyond 35. You were great.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Well, that's it. That's it for episode 1 of Birthing Beyond 35. I hope you enjoyed listening to Lindsey's story. You can also head to birthingbeyond35.com to leave me a message and submit your story if you'd like to be a guest on the show. You can also follow me at Birthing Beyond 35. And don't get me wrong, I know there can be risks and complications associated with pregnancy as a woman ages, and I'm in no way dismissing the data that is out there. All I'm trying to do here is give women who were once like me a little bit of hope and reassurance that everything will be okay. Please do look out for episode 2 coming soon.